Okay.
All right.
Hello, everyone. Now, I invite you to officially submit our the meeting will come to order. Welcome to the December 1st regular meeting of the West Hartford Human Rights Commission. My name is Esr Funding. I'm the co-chair of the commission. The West Hartford Human Rights Commission fosters mutual understanding and respect among people and encourages equality of treatment of all people, regardless of race, color, religious creed, sex, sexual orientation, civil union status, gender identity or expression, marital status, familial status, genetic information, age, economic status, lawful source of income, national origin or ancestry, veteran status or present or past history of physical, mental, intellectual, or learning disability, including but not limited to blindness. The meeting is being conducted in a virtual format in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act, as amended by Public Act number 21-2, which authorizes municipalities to conduct public meetings virtually, also in accordance with the Governor Lamont Executive Order concerning the conduct of public meetings and proceedings. Members of the public can view these meetings live on West Hartford Community Television at www.whctv.org and YouTube/WatchCTV5. The meeting is also being recorded for on-demand viewing and will be available on town's website for at least 45 days. Since we are conducting this meeting in a virtual format, there are some special rules and procedures that I need to cover before we begin. First, I ask all participants to mute your device when you are not speaking. If you wish to be recognized, please raise your hand and I will call on you in the order I see hand is raised. If you are participating by audio only, or I do not call on you and the debate is ending, then unmute your phone and let me know so then I can recognize you. Second, all the speakers must be a good faith effort to state the person's name and title at the outset of each occasion that such person participates in the meeting. Third, all votes must be taken by roll call unless the vote is unanimous. Fourth, a reminder that if any participant has a problem with connectivity, you should immediately call Pramod, whose phone number you were provided earlier. He will let me know and we will recess the meeting while the problem is resolved. If it cannot be resolved quickly, we will ask you to call into the meeting using a phone and participate via audio only. Now, let's proceed to roll call and agenda items. We will start with attendance. Isam Barai is here. Don Ennis.
I'm here.
Aurora Melita is excused for today. Eric Schoenberg.
Here.
Theodore Mancini.
Here.
Sarah Raskin. Kristen Soul.
Present.
Takesha Everett.
Present.
Thank you so much. Then the next item on our agenda for tonight is the approval of November 2021 meetings minutes. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda, the minutes?
Motion to accept the minutes.
I second the motion.
A motion, and Don is second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Abstains? Minute accepted. Thank you so much. Now I would like to welcome our tonight guests, our great Board of Education members of the great town of West Hartford. I would love for my co-chair and dear friend Don Ennis to introduce both of our guests, and then they can also introduce themselves, and we'll go from there. Don.
Thank you very much. And I also wanted to make a note, as Takesha reminds us, that there are some technical problems happening. So if there's any issue with our live transmission, the video will be provided, as Isam mentioned, and we are working on a fix for the technical problems that may interfere with this meeting, but we will keep you posted, so stay tuned. Welcome, the new elected chair of the Board of Ed, Lorna Thomas Farquharson, and member, re-elected, Jason Chang.
Well, thank you so very much.
Lorna, if you'd like to start. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Whoever would like to start, we invited you here today to talk about a curriculum that I first learned about in the summer of 2020, and a lot more people have learned about in the most recent weeks based on articles and a response from our superintendent, Tom Moore. There's some controversy, some questions. There are people who love the idea. There are people who are very much concerned about the idea. And we would like to very much allow you to make a presentation. And then we, the commissioners, will ask questions, and we're going to also invite our members of the public to ask questions. So thank you. Jason or Lorna, who would like to speak first?
Well, I will just say greetings, and once again, thank you so very much. It's an honor to be here. So glad to certainly be here to support my colleague, Dr. Chang, who will be leading the way with the presentation. I will be participating in the question and answer, but we certainly appreciate this opportunity, and we look forward to a robust discussion. So Dr. Chang, thank you.
All right. Yes. Can you guys hear me okay? Yep. Awesome. Yes. To the commissioners and the public who have joined the meeting, thank you for the invitation. I'm looking forward to the conversation this evening. So I tried to structure my comments in my presentation in a way that kind of begins with the structure of the district, then turning to board policy and state statutes, then to look at some stats around the concerning gender identity, and then to think about consequences, some guiding principles, and then turning to some of the supporting kind of dimensions of the gender literacy curriculum, right? So I believe, Dawn, you budgeted for about 10 to 15 minutes. Is that right?
I think that's about right. I think whatever it takes for us to understand. And
okay,
please do start with what SEL stands for, and assume we know nothing.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So SEL stands for social emotional learning. And sometimes I start off with somewhat of a joke to say, you know, there's it goes a little bit like this. There's a fish swimming in a fish bowl that comes by two other friends and says to the other two fish, "How's the water today?" And the one fish looks at the other and says, "What's water?" Right? And in some ways, you know, discussions of gender or identity are often, you know, the water that we swim in, and that we don't often, you know, recognize it as something that is in our life, but it nevertheless structures who we are, how we relate to the world, and how we relate to each other. And so, you know, really, you know, this is where I think the gender literacy curriculum is situated, right? So just to give you a little bit of background, the curriculum process within the district is a normal part of school operations, and is informed by a set of administrators and professionals and other teachers that are guided by State Department of Education frameworks, standards, and other model curriculum. And so one thing to know about the way that education is structured in Connecticut is we have a home rule state, which means that state statutes for education are made out, but then it's up to districts to decide how they're going to implement those statutes, right? So that does create some variability, right? So and there are also statutes which are exempt from that. For instance, the the non-discrimination clause of, that schools have to accept all children, right? So it's not up to districts to decide, right? So, one of the reasons why I preface that is because West Hartford Public Schools has chosen a means of building curriculum and using its infrastructure for developing its approach to fulfilling state statutes by the development of a one community network. And that is an innovative strategy of bringing in community members to have input into how the context of the curriculum, and also, as a way of double checking blind spots and seeing where a community can provide some insight. And this also comes from the realization that schools are most effective when they build really strong family partnerships, right? And so this, the social emotional learning approach and the curriculum, the gender literacy curriculum, is an expression of Board of Education policies. This derives from one in particular, policy 1800, which is our equity and anti-racism policy. And just if I could read the vision statement, the guiding vision statement for this, just to give you a sense of how our work is structured by board policy, right? So just think in terms of, the state generates its statutes and the district interprets them, and the board and the district work together for the construction of policy, right? So we, the members of the West Hartford Public Schools, dedicate ourselves to the pursuit of equity. Equitable schools are those that value and honor all in our community as unique individuals capable of maximizing their true potential. We make a solemn promise to identify and dismantle all elements of systemic racism and historic inequalities. We vow to clear paths with a relentless duty to those in traditionally marginalized groups. We pledge to partner with all families in the service of the success of each child. And that statement was unanimously adopted by the board in 2020. And that statement served to generate the various dimensions of the equity and anti-racism policy that covered budget, resource allocation, recruitment and retention, high quality curriculum, professional development, family and community partnerships, environment, climate, and accountability, right? So one of the things that really informs the gender literacy curriculum is this attention to equity for every student, but also the need to build mutual respect, right? And so with as the district set out to generate its curriculum, right, it knew that there needed to be a structured progression based on celebrated children's literature, and these, one of the reasons why this is important is because the district is also responsible for addressing state statutes as recent as the last legislative session, in which PA 2195, which revised statutes on bullying, right, and the need to have curriculum that addresses the experiences of bullying in schools, right? And one of the things that is striking to realize and underscores the why this is seen as an important dimension of a public education is that the Government Accountability Office generated a national report recently that identified that student-to-student harassment, threats, and attacks have increased in the year prior to the pandemic, and have worsened by the account of other reporting, right? So while racial bias was the most common form of discrimination, accounting for more than half of those cases, gender and sexuality make up the second most common form, more than 30% of the cases, right? It's also worth noting that the most common form of hate crime in the country is against trans women of color. right? And this is underscored by the ways that the stigma of trans, leads to a denial of opportunities in life. And those denial of opportunities in life generate increased vulnerabilities. Those increased vulnerabilities reinforce the stigmas, right? And so this is an effort to address the prevalence of violence based on gender identity, right? And as a member of the Hate Crimes Advisory Council, the Governor's Hate Crimes Advisory Council, and co-chair of the Community Awareness Subcommittee, we know that these are that gender identity, that gender-based violence is a serious problem and goes massively underreported, in part because of its normalization, right? So these are some of the background information, right, that informs the value of addressing gender literacy, right? So again, this is important information as context for understanding why the schools are invested in this, right? So in 2018, there's a national study that of trans and non-binary youth, in which 30% of trans male teens had attempted suicide, right? And in that same study, 41% of non-binary youth reported attempted suicide as well, right? So the addressing youth gender identity is an important safety measure, but it also has really wide-ranging consequences. That same Government Accountability Office report had also generated a list of consequences that happen as a result of the kinds of student-to-student harassment that happens in American public schools. So for students who experience hostile behaviors are more likely to experience depression and anxiety, interrupted sleep and eating disorders, the loss of interest in activities they used to enjoy, physical health complaints, decreased academic achievement, and school participation, right? And interesting, it's important to also identify that students who bully others are more likely to abuse alcohol and other drugs in adolescence and as adults, get into fights, vandalize property, and drop out of school, engage in early sexual activity, have criminal convictions and traffic citations as adults, be abusive towards their romantic partners, spouses, or children as adults. And then students who witness bullying are more likely to have increased use of tobacco, alcohol, or other drugs, have increased mental health problems, including depression and anxiety, and may miss or skip school, right? So when we think about the consequences, of these kinds of interactions, right, it becomes important to carry out a curriculum that supports student knowledge, respect, and equity as a preventative measure, right? And so, the pursuit of these policies and the curriculum is really set on those foundation of the equity of students, that they can see themselves in the curriculum and feel fulfilled and that belonging in schools. But this is also a measure of anti-violence, right? To address gender-based violence as a larger set of, a social pattern. And then also, this is really a protection of the fullness of humanity. As a Human Rights Commission, this is it's an important dimension in which that gender diversity is recognized as a way that there are many ways to live full, meaningful lives, and that gender expression is one important way in which people do that. So this is all about the pursuit of high quality education, right? Because one of the things that the district is known for is its use of the CASEL framework, right? So CASEL is the Collaborative for Academic, Social, and Emotional Learning, right? And this is a long-standing collaborative nationwide that has been in operation for 25 years. using the expertise and the professional research from scholars and other academics, practitioners, to look at improving education, improving the well-being of students. And so, this was, one of the things that's very interesting about it is a multidisciplinary approach, right? From psychology to teacher education, economics, literature scholars. Like there are many different, folks that were involved in this for, over 2 decades. Right, and they're all coming at the same problem from different directions, and they came to the same conclusion, right? And that is that students learn better when they are seen in the vernacular of today, and that this is that their curriculum, the guidance around using socially informed curriculum it actually improves literacy, improves numeracy, right? Because if we think about how we engage or how we build knowledge, it's because we feel that it's relevant to us, right? Or that we have a connection to it. Abstraction is one thing that is a higher order learning capacity. But that's reinforced with personal and validated personal experiences, right? So so I guess let me check with my notes here. Right, so really want to enforce that this was evidence-based, proven research, right? And that these kinds of approaches that incorporate social justice, materials add to the academic performance of students, right? And that's a key insight. And so the CASTLE framework is something that's used across the nation. This is also, there's a kind of mirrored organization within the state of Connecticut. State has its own collaborative, supported by participation from more than 24 state level organizations dedicated to the success and well-being of students and children. The other thing that's worth mentioning is that this work is also the social emotional learning dimension of public education in West Hartford Public Schools has also been supported by Esr Funding. Right, so we've used this funding, we've made decisions to use that funding because we know how effective it is, right? And this is really important to help students recover from the pandemic and to continue the successful traditions of education in our district. So what we see is the first steps of the gender literacy curriculum and social emotional learning in general is a really showing a strong response to existing policy, but also leading the state and anticipating the future implementation of new curriculum that was passed, state statutes passed last legislative session that included a model K-8 social studies curriculum for LGBTQIA studies, right? So at the present moment, the Connecticut Council for Social Studies and the State Department of Education are revising the social studies inquiry frameworks and standards so that the model curriculum that they produce are more easily adopted by, if you remember at the beginning of my presentation, adopted by district curriculum supervisors, right? So in a way, West Hartford is ahead of the curve, but these are standards, educational standards for LGBTQIA studies that will be released in 3 years. And with that, I think that's I think that's probably where I could stop, kind of coming full circle back to implementation and the structure of the district. So happy to respond to any questions.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Jason, for your presentation and for being here today. So I think I will start the questions actually myself. I know I'm sure the commissioners will do have a lot of questions. So what was the guidelines you guys adapted to create the curriculum? Like, have you looked at previous experiences and if that was there was there any other experiences, how that is going on, if there's any other experiences where people implemented such a curriculum in other places, and or did you turn out to experts to get their input and creating the curriculum? Did you talk to parents or kids? So how this what was the guidelines you guys followed to create and implement this curriculum? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that question. There should be a point of clarification before I respond. One of the things that I learned in being on the Board of Education is that there are a kind of division of responsibilities that happen between the board and the district, right? So, the board is primarily a policy setting and an oversight body, right? And when we look at the construction of the curriculum, that is a management issue, right? That's something handled by the district, right? So in essence, we could say that the district is carrying out board policy, right? And then we eventually, through the course of building that and carrying it out, we evaluate how they've done that, right? So the board itself does not sit down to say, read this book, that book in this way, with this kind of preparation, right? So on the one hand, that what I could say is what I know about what's been shared publicly in public meetings about the curriculum is that it's come from a number of community interactions from the One Community network that I discussed earlier, and then also with the LGBTQIA Alliance within the district, which is composed of other teachers, staff, and admin that were informing ways of addressing gaps in the curriculum. And so there's a way that there's both internal conversations about how to continuously improve the curriculum, continuously improve on the lived experiences of students in the school and the need to address them, but then also asking for that kind of community participation through town halls and public feedback sessions, and so I know that has been a part of their process, and one of the things that makes curriculum construction in West Hartford Public Schools unique.
Thank you so much. Before I recognize Ted, I just want to say I was just notified that our technical problem has been solved and we have been live, so we're good. So now Ted.
I got a bunch of different questions for you, so I don't know if you want to bounce back and forth for me.
I'll take notes.
But to begin with, just to build off of the last question. So what you're saying is that the people that created this curriculum, those are unelected officials who put together this curriculum, and who are they? Who do they answer to?
So if I
wanna just share all of your questions just for the time purposes. Can you list all of your questions and then Jason will take notes and respond to them?
Okay, I'll see.
Okay. Lorna also weigh in if Lorna wants to weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead. Yeah, sure. You want me to ask, or do you want to let Lorna?
Yes, please go ahead and ask your questions, and then we'll give Jason and Lauren a chance to respond to all of them.
Okay. So how much was the, or how much does the SEL, SJL cost the district every year above and beyond the $1.5 million allocated from the federal funds? And under which form was it decided to dedicate the public funds to this? How was the decision made to switch to an SEL, SJL curriculum? And can you actually get into some of the curriculum and explain some of the curriculum? Can you define social emotional learning through an equity lens? Can you let the public know the different parts of this SEL, SJL curriculum? I mean, just one line. I happen to be looking here from which Board of Ed meeting was this? Equity advancement. I think this was the September 9th board meeting. And just under elementary school SEL, SJ curriculum work group review and revision update. Section 4, I'm not going to read every line. There's a bunch of lines I could read. Section 4, action. Does it foster a moral imperative to be agents of change for social justice? That's within the curriculum itself at the elementary school level. And then coming here to the 1800 educational equity policy. And I've gone over these a bunch of times. I've read these a bunch of times, but one of the lines that stood out that I just picked up on this last time I read it was, as a Board of Education, we have a statutory duty to implement the state's educational interest. So I had a question from that. Do you represent the state or do you represent the parents when it comes to the schools, curriculum, what happens in the schools? Another part of this, WHPS will utilize innovative approaches to strive to recruit and retain high qualified certified staff across all areas and leadership levels who reflect the diversity of our community and share our commitment to anti-racism and anti-bias. And just in hiring decisions, is race and policy agreement utilized in hiring decisions? Does merit trump everything else? Which is more important? And again, I got questions that can keep us all night, but one of the most important ones, and actually one of the ones that I've been requested to ask, is who do parents inform when their children, or when they want to have their children, opt out of this curriculum?
All right, is that?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ted.
Yeah,
I'm sure you have more questions. We'll give a chance to Lorna and Jason to respond, and then we can come back for if you have other comments or something. And also, we'll let other commissioners ask questions. So now, Lorna and Jason, if you'd like guys to respond to that.
Certainly. Well, first off, thank you very much for the questions. Many questions there, and that is something that we certainly want to be aware of just to continue the level of engagement. I will say, for the purpose of time and just out of respect for the questions that were asked, we'll give a high-level response, but certainly please do continue sharing what your questions are. There are certainly many means of communicating with us, whether it be coming to a Board of Ed meeting at the beginning of the meeting, and at the end we had open comment sessions, and also via email. And so this is not the only opportunity to raise questions and express your thoughts. So thank you for that. And in terms of, again, with you speaking of starting with the questions in terms of the social emotional learning, and how much does that cost, and what decisions were made to put that together, I want to just take a step back and recognize, when it comes to social emotional curriculum and learning, I want to take away the word curriculum, and just, when we think of the word social, that is something that applies to all of us. That is how we engage with individuals. That's a level of interpersonal engagement and awareness, and intrapersonal awareness, which also touches on emotions. We all have some level of emotion, some level of having that in terms of how we interact with others and how we engage with others. So when it comes to social emotional learning, we are just trying to support and implement pieces that are a natural part of the human experience. And this is a curriculum that is helping to propose that, to support that. So even once our students graduate from the school system, social emotional learning is still an ongoing process for all of us. You figure all of us here are here for the Human Rights Commission, human rights, humans, engagement, all of those pieces. So it's relevant to all. And what we are striving to do is to support that purpose when it comes to our young people, the continuum of their development. As we know, our school system is as early as pre-K all the way to 12th grade, and we have continuing ed students as well. And we are trying to plant the seeds for their development that will help them foster and grow while they're with us, but more importantly, when they leave us and they grow into becoming adults. So in terms of the social emotional curriculum, that is what we are striving to do. The funding that supports that, every year we do go through a different budget process. And what Jason, Dr. Chang was speaking about in terms of the Esr funding that is used right now to support this effort, that's because the Esr funding, as we know, is because of, unfortunately, the pandemic, and all states receive some type of funding for this. And there are specific criteria that have to be met in order to utilize the Esr funding. And the specifics of that mean it has to go towards some effort or some entity that was a direct result or impacted by the pandemic. So when it comes to that funding, it has to go towards addressing some element that was impacted or influenced because of the pandemic. And I think all of us collectively can say that certainly the pandemic has impacted many in terms of social emotional development, learning, and just the status, the mental health of our young people and adults as well. And so we recognize the pandemic unveiled many challenges that were already existing in our community, but that were pre-existing the presence of the pandemic as well. And so that's why the funding was used to address not only what we're seeing now in terms of the pandemic, but also what we may see as sequela thereafter. You know, we don't just want to respond to the here and now consequences or concerns. We also want to be mindful of what may continue to trigger and unfold as we move along. So that's kind of a high level umbrella piece in terms of what we're thinking of in terms of the importance of social emotional learning, why it's important to invest the funding in this, and how it approaches the development from a whole continuum of growth, not only from our young people, but as they continue to grow into adults. And there was so much that you said, Ted, part of your questions was trying to kind of collapse it all into one piece as well. You also made reference to policy 1800, the educational equity policy. Again, that is just a practical way of responding to an effort that we have ongoing within our school system. As we know, our motto is clear paths, bright future, no limits. And this is a way of putting into practice what we're striving to do. The educational equity policy is recognizing that when we say we're committed to all of our students, we're committed to their development and helping to support them achieve and excel in whatever means is necessary to help them to get there, to help them to recognize what they're capable of. In terms of equity, we know that is not only in terms of self-development, but it's also trying to help our young people recognize how to engage with others. And those are skill sets that we certainly know we adults continue to work on and grow and support as well. And so with the educational equity policy, that was a process that was very engaging from many entities, from the community, from our administration, from our staff. It was something that we recognized we wanted to hear input from the community in putting this together. And we had open comment sessions. We received feedback via email. And collectively, there was a majority of individuals who recognized this is something that we want to invest our time and effort in because it's important. Our children deserve this. And so that is what we strived for. And as it relates, again, coming back to social emotional learning, this is important. This is what our children deserve. We know they've been through a lot. So you figure in March, we're going to be approaching 2 years of a pandemic. Our young people have been through a lot. And so we are committed to investing in them in all means necessary to support them now, but more importantly, to support them as they continue to develop moving forward. Jason, please, pardon, don't want to monopolize the time.
No, that was brilliant. I underscore, all those points. One of the things I wanted to respond to just about the initial question about the curriculum accountability. I think this is a really important issue for folks to understand, because you sort of, implied that there were, that elected officials weren't making those kinds of decisions, but elected officials don't have to have any training on education. Anyone can run for Board of Education. It doesn't matter. So, so it's not necessarily hypothetically desirable to have curriculum dictated by elected people. What instead we have is a system of professionals who have been licensed and have degrees who spent years studying and training at the state's best institutions for teacher training and for the development of curriculum, and who've spent time shadowing other teachers, learning in different school systems, and that when they're hired as curriculum leaders, they have already experienced a number of different learning environments, have been informed from many different schools of thought, and then bring that kind of expertise around what works for students, what works for the team of teachers they have, and that set of credentialing, of licensing, and of using highly trained people to construct the curriculum is one of the best ways of ensuring that we have the highest quality education, and that these folks are dedicated to doing their job better every day, and that they're always thinking about how they can improve what they've done. And as we know, all large organizations change slowly, and that our district is a large organization. And so as we develop new curriculum, the district is involved in professional development that brings the teachers into these into these new competencies. And let's see. Also, you had asked about specifics from the curriculum, and what I can share with you, which might be I don't know if this is what you're interested in, but I can share the learning targets for it's sort of banded, so that there's a pre-K to grade 4 or grade 3 band, and then a grade 4 to grade 5 band, and so the first set of learning targets is I can express who I am. I show respect to others when they express who they are. I can identify examples of gender stereotypes. Right? Those are the learning targets for pre-K to grade 3. Under grade 4 to 5, the learning target there is I can be respectful to others and refer to them by their preferred pronouns. That's the learning target for that one. So these are ways that those learning targets are achieved through different lessons, right? Some of those lessons are driven by children's literature, and that is, these are illustrated books, many by celebrated authors, award-winning authors, and they may be subject to change, but nevertheless they are there to achieve those learning targets, right? So again, I can express who I am, right? I show respect to others when they express who they are. So when we think about the how this matters to education, these are if there is a problem, right? If someone cannot express who they are without having respect, right? That is one, that's a violation of our school climate. Our ability to create a school climate where all students can learn, right? So it's important to address these things when they appear. And so some people say, well, when is it age appropriate? Well, it's appropriate when there are problems, right? When there are issues, and we know from student experiences that these can happen. So this is where the district starts, and it fulfills those kinds of objectives of public education. And just to answer your question about hiring, hiring is a really vital part of building a top tier district, because you want the best talent, and the only way to get the best talent is to make sure you have a diverse pool, and that's what this policy is in reference to making sure that the pool of applicants is as diverse as possible, right? And that you asked if race trumps merit, or what, this is about their capacities as a teacher, right? And it's all about, you can only ensure that you have the best if you have a diverse pool. And so that's something that, as a university professor at UConn, engaged in a search right now, we know that the diverse pools of applicants get you the very best. And so that's what the district has strived for. And the West Hartford Public Schools is a desirable district to work in. And so there's, those selection processes, do follow non-discrimination procedures, and are very much merit-based.
Thank you so much, Jason. I would really, I would appreciate if we just can keep our questions and answers short for just time purposes. And I'm sorry, we guys were keeping you tonight for a little longer than we expected, but we appreciate your being here, and we appreciate the conversation as well. So I will recognize now Don Ennis.
Hello, Co-Chair Don Ennis speaking. I'd like to ask only two questions, and one of them is the question that Ted asked that unfortunately hasn't been answered, and it's the question of, can parents opt out? And my corollary to that would be, why would you allow parents to opt out of any part of education? My own personal question is, an article that was circulated that Superintendent Moore addressed claimed that you were teaching children as young as kindergarten about transgender. Now, on a personal note, I am transgender, and I've known that since I was 4 years old, as many trans people and gender non-binary, non-conforming folks discover at an age in where you basically learn about boys and girls and that kind of thing. So I'd like you to address those two, either Lorna or Jason Oliver Chang, if you wouldn't mind. And I'm sorry about asking a long question.
Yeah, Don, thank you. Oh, Lorna, did you want to respond?
I was. We'll tag team. So you go ahead, and I'll follow you.
Okay. So the question was about why trans issues are being raised at the kindergarten level, or why? Yes, and indeed, your experience speaks to that rationale. The non-discrimination clause I pointed to earlier states that the schools cannot turn away any student for any reason. So if there is a child that's older than 5 years old, living within the district, they're permitted and indeed asked to come to school. And by allowing any student to come in, we have to accommodate any and all gender identities, and that's our commitment to addressing everyone, our equity policy, and that means that that even if there were no transgender children in the district, that it would still be important to teach it, because it is a reality in the world, and that's the commitment to equity. Right, that it's not just about, as we saw in the learning targets, right? It's not just about expressing who you are, but I show respect to others when they express who they are. I think that's a very basic kind of fundamental rationale, right? And very, reasonable and but profound kind of learning target, right? So can parents opt out? So the board has a, let me see where, so the board has a policy, 6235, which is designated difficult conversations. And in this policy, states that that as a part of living in the world, that we often have challenging conversations, right? And that's important for everyone, and that the schools model, rational and measured civil discourse, right? And for that reason, there is no opt-out for difficult conversations. And that in that policy, it's also designated that teachers are allowed, should be allowed to share their thoughts and learn with the students, right? So that in difficult conversations, that it's important for everyone to be learners, right? And I think that's a really important dimension of that policy, and I think generates the kind of modeling of civil discourse that we want to see when students do leave the schools, right? When they graduate, and that they're prepared to handle difficult conversations, in their adult life, and do so with respect for each other and equanimity. So I don't know, Lauren, did you want to respond?
You did well. You did well. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Now we have time for 2 more questions from Sarah and Takisha. Then I will recognize Sarah, and I appreciate if you can just keep it short, please. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sarah Ruskin on the Human Rights Commission. I just want to start by thanking you both for a really excellent, informative presentation. Appreciate your time, appreciate your knowledge and your experience, and for coming here and sharing it with us. It was fantastic to hear from you. As a neuropsychologist and a university professor, I just want to say that I appreciate you following the literature, and I want to make sure that everybody here knows that social emotional learning is not a new concept. As you said, it's been around for a long time. There's considerable research that shows that it has positive effects, not just on things like bullying, reducing violence, reducing mental health problems, reducing suicide attempts, but also improving academics. And that it's also, during the pandemic been heavily shown to have made a big difference for kids feeling isolated. I also want to thank you in the same vein for leaning on experts, for using people's expertise, for not just going along with whatever, any particular group of parents might want, who may or may not have all of the information at their fingertips, or may be reacting to lack of information. And I want to just say that I have a child who went through the West Hartford Public Schools, graduated a few years ago, is a sexual minority youth. And when they look back at their time in the West Hartford Public Schools, their biggest complaint, that is a very emotional complaint for them, is the lack of recognition of sexual minority youth when they were there. And so I very, very much appreciate and tell you this mom is really glad to see these changes. So I have a couple of questions about some of whether this includes, I know that I've read the articles about picture books for kids when they're little. And again, my child knew from a very, very young age who they were. It's part of their identity. It's not something that they sort of picked up in puberty. It was who they were from the very early stage. But some of their complaints were things like the health class was very heteronormative. And I don't know if that's been looked at all or changed within this. But that was something they found quite upsetting, in fact. The dress codes were very binary, and sort of different for girls, what girls were allowed to wear and what boys were allowed to wear. I don't know if that's been changed. Even simple things like, the amazing Hall High Jazz Band that had gender binary outfits, so you had to pick one. So I'm just wondering how much this is it new or old curriculum? I'm not really sure. I know there's been new attention to it, but I'm not sure if the curriculum's actually new, and whether any of these kinds of changes have happened. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for, oh, I'm sorry, Lorna, please go ahead.
That's all right. I was going to thank you, as Jason was saying, thank you so much for your comments and for the questions. In terms of the curriculum and what is it new, It's not new, it's enhanced. In other words, we're building upon where things were, where we're trying to modify where changes need to be modified, and we're trying to further enhance a level of awareness and inclusivity. In terms of the examples you gave of some of the concerns that were raised in terms of attire, gender, a gender kind of binary attire, and the other examples you gave, those are examples that we want to hear of. We have heard of those, and we want to hear more of that. And that just reminds us that, as Jason described in terms of the role of the Board of Education, it is to implement policy. Our role is to govern. Govern is to give a North Star of what we're aspiring to. And the administration, the teachers, the principals, they're on the management level, the day-to-day work. But in terms of the policies rather, is a living, breathable document. It's not something that just stays put forever and ever. No, policies get updated, revised. Touching on such subjects as you made reference to in terms of dress code, how archaic may they be? Do we need to modify them? So things that get addressed in policy are influenced by comments, concerns we receive from the public, but also certainly wanting to follow state and federal statutes and mandates. So there's certain things we have to change just to keep compliant, but there are times where we may need to modify in terms of how it may be implemented on a more micro level within our school district. So thank you once again for what you have raised. Have heard that, and it certainly is something to further explore and look into. So thank you again.
Yeah, I would just underscore, for the clothing policy 5530, which has been revised, and it does include supports for gender expression, and that this is an important dimension too, because it is a part of those learning targets, right? That I can express who I am, right? And that one of the ways in which people express who they are is their clothing choices. Right, and if students are receiving, ridicule or being teased, or that their clothes become a problem for another student, then that demonstrates the need for these kinds of learning targets, right? So and so when we see that, that's the indication that that this is age appropriate, right? That this is where the intervention can happen and make a significant difference in the lives of students. So in addition to your question about the health class, yes, this was an issue that was raised last school year, and in the 5th grade human reproduction, or I think it's the human health and development module that was based almost on, seemed to me to be almost based on a Johnson & Johnson advertisement for deodorant, and so it's kind of, I think the district, in its negotiating different kinds of what to pay attention to, had leaned on something that was outdated, and didn't have enough feedback from parents to understand or to think of it as something that needed to be changed. But there were a number of parents who had children with gender diverse identities, and that the human growth and development curriculum was changed with support from other experts around the state, and passed through the same curriculum development process that I outlined earlier. Going through the district with supervisors and other experts and trained professionals, and now focuses on using language that doesn't attach that respects the difference between sex and gender, right? Biological sex and gender, and that those are important conversations. Those are important distinctions to make, because of the way that gender identity is different than human development, right? And so in the way that the the lessons were changed, it now occupies a much more inclusive, and accurate, I think, scientifically accurate, portrayal for all students.
If I could just follow up, thank you for that. A quick follow-up, not a question, just to tell you, it was in the 5th grade curriculum, particularly that I heard about. It was the middle school curriculum that I guess, if I can say this on recorded television, was, all condoms all the time. And so for my kid, that wasn't going to be something they were ever going to need. And they would have liked some and I would have liked, we talk at home, but in the school, it would be nice to have for other kids some explanation of how to be safe if that's not what you're doing.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Now I'll recognize Takesha and then Liz Santo after Takesha.
Hi, so I'm going to be really brief. I think there's a question in what I'm about to say, but I appreciate your presentation and the discussion that we're having tonight. As an African-American woman who at the time was a girl growing up in schools, I just want to identify aloud by saying, shame on us as a society that we haven't exercised social emotional learning before now. A key function of schools are to help children understand how to function in a world that is ever growing and ever changing around them consistently and constantly. And a core reason we have bullying and problems in school is because people get disoriented as children to things that are not their normal, that doesn't look like them, that doesn't seem like them, that doesn't seem proper based on their narrow experience of the world. And if we are not introducing children at a young age and a continuous age through our educational system about how to deal with that disorientation and how to understand and acknowledge who they are and how that doesn't make it any worse or better when you experience someone who is not like you, but rather give them the skills to understand how to interact with that disorientation, how to identify that, and to even have conversations about that either in school or with your parents or with your peers, then we are creating adults who do not understand fundamentally what the world looks like outside of their narrow perspective. So I thank you all for introducing this curriculum. I think it's very important that we don't do anything in our school systems that is about indoctrination, but is literally about exploring the opportunities of the world and preparing people for the future, preparing children for the future they're going to enter into. So I thank you for this presentation tonight. I think my question that is embedded in that speech is, are we creating a curriculum opportunity that looks at all the ways people show up and that we are evolving on a consistent basis, so that recognizing the world is not static, that it is dynamic? And how are we updating the curriculum on whatever periodic or regular basis to provide that education for the youth? Thank you.
I thank you so much for your well-spoken comments and for the question. And your question, I will say yes to what you shared, in that with the curriculum, it's a concurrent process where it is one of introspection for the child, for who's growing into an adult, really trying to help them to be confident in who they are, which means exploring who they are, trying to get a sense of who they are and what does that mean. And the concurrent piece is also learning how to engage, how to be respectful, how to interact with others who are going through their own exploratory process, whether it aligns with their own or may it be different. And so it is for that purpose, it naturally will be an evolving process. It will be an evolving sense of learning and curriculum development. Again, the policy is living, breathable documents. Curriculum is as well. And so this is something that we want to be more assertive in those efforts, but what we're talking about now may be a bit different down the road. The main focus is, as long as we continue to support healthy development in our children, then we're moving in the right path.
Thank you so much, Lorna. I will call on Liz Santo for the last question on this topic.
Hi, good evening, and I'm sorry my video is not working, but I am a parent of 3. Two of my children have gone through the West Hartford system, and I have a third currently at one of the high schools who is a junior. And I'm learning a little bit more about the SEL through his community class in high school. And one of my questions is, it is done during a main subject area during his English class, which is a curriculum, content required class. Now, this is the first year, I believe, there's going to be more credits needed for graduation. So it's gone from 22 credits, I believe, to now 25. He's the first of that class, I believe, which means there's additional classes and, more time needed. My goal, I need him to graduate on time, so I'm very concerned about that, and having other pieces, although I can see some benefit in this. I'm not sure I agree with having it done during a core required class. I'm told the times that they have them on Wednesdays, it's extended. So it's a longer class where they include some of the English, but then they include the other community information, which I'm still trying to gather what exactly are some of the presentations that are shown to my student. But nonetheless, I believe it only shortens the other classes on that day because of this inclusion of the community time frame. So I'm concerned about that because, again, we have more requirements, and I'm not sure if all of this belongs in the classroom. I think a lot of this dialogue should be included at home. We have very good conversations with my high schooler. So those are kind of my two comments about the curriculum. And actually, thirdly, if my student is uncomfortable at any time during some of the discussions, I was told by the teacher that they don't have to participate, but I don't know if that impacts grading at all, or, the outcome of his performance in the classroom. So those are kind of some of my points that I would love to hear your feedback on. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Jason, you'd like to respond to that?
Yeah,
Briefly?
sure. I can respond. Yeah, Liz, thank you for sharing that your experience, and yeah, so I think the standard response that I would say to anyone that has an issue with their children's education is to first talk with the teacher, and just get in touch with the teacher yourself, and then to also include the principal too, if that's they are the ones that have the most detailed information about the structure of the curriculum, the potential trade-offs that may be happening. But I would suspect that that this is a very conscientious kind of decision, that is deliberately placed in in a kind of sequence or schedule that supports the academic dimensions. My understanding of the community sessions is that there's guided discussions and other kinds of interactions that draw from the learning that happens in the other days, and so there's which is a reflection of some of those key principles behind the council framework.
Right. I guess my follow-up to that, Jason, is I'd like to give my student permission if it is offensive in any way, or he chooses not to participate. I really need to be reassured that that is not going to impact his performance in class, because as we speak about equity, it's equity for every student. So he's part of that equation and should be considered so. So I have followed up with the teacher, and I'm in process of meeting with the principal. But in the meantime, I would like to really see what these presentations are being shown, if there are surveys involved, and being able to opt out if he so chooses to, as he might feel offended by any of the information. So are you all saying that is not possible, or is that?
Can I ask you, what do you mean offended? What would you be offended by? What would he be offended by?
maybe that's a strong word, but just not comfortable in sharing discussion and information.
I think that's something I think the teacher is best able to handle. Particularly, if you're concerned about grading, that is at the teachers. That is their area. So that's certainly that's the person that you would want to talk to.
I just want to give a point of clarification.
Sure.
This isn't a question, Dr. Chang. It's because you brought it up. Policy 6235 that actually does provide an opt-out option, as provided by law. So things that are covered by law, such as freedom of speech, freedom of expression. So if a parent or a student wanted to opt out, they would have the opportunity to opt out. So Liz, you would be able to opt your student out under that guidance. I wouldn't just take my word for it. I'd also talk with them, but the policy that you did refer to, Dr. Chang, 6235, does allow for that opt-out option.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ted, for the clarification. I would very sadly put a stop to this topic today, but I can assure you this is not the end of the conversation. We always welcome Jason and Lorna back. We always welcome any questions or comments you guys have of the commissioner or the public. You can email the commission at any time, and we will gladly share your concerns and questions with the Board of Education. But also you have a direct access to Board of Education. You can email them or talk to them at any time, attend also their meetings, and I'm sure they will more than happy to communicate with you and answer all questions you have. As I mentioned, this is not the end of the conversation, but unfortunately, this is the end of our time for that topic tonight, because we still have some items on the agenda to go through. So I would love to thank Jason and Lorna for being here today and for talking to us and for taking so long of their time tonight to be with us. So thank you so much, Lorna. Thank you so much, Jason, for being with us today and for all the work you guys do for us and for our students and our community. So thank you so much. You are welcome to stay with us. You are welcome to excuse yourself, and we will keep going for the rest of our agenda. So thank you so much.
Thank you for the opportunity to share.
Thank you very much, both of you.
Good
Much
night.
appreciated.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Yep. Bye-bye.
The next two items on our agenda are for my great friend Sarah Raskin. Any updates on the UN Human Rights Declaration and the Town of Compassion. Sarah?
Hi, thank you. This is Sarah Raskin, Commissioner. Dawn, please chime in on the human rights. So thanks to Dawn's amazing work, we've received all of the videos from the West Hartford Public Schools. Rosina Haskins did a phenomenal job with Craig Diamond helping her out. They're gorgeous and adorable. Pramod, are you still here? Yeah, did an amazing job with the Mayor's Youth Council. In fact, it's a little bit of a competition which of those are better filmed, I have to say, but they're excellent. So we're down to our last few. Pramod needs to get me the last two that he has, and I don't know if he has an update on that. And then the preamble is being read by a group of kids in a disability kids group that meets on Saturday. So they're going to all be on a Zoom, and they're going to record the Zoom of them doing the preamble, and then we'll be done. It will air on December 10th at 8 p.m. And I'm estimating it'll run about 30 minutes.
Hi, this is Pramod. Sarah, so I have, I'll be taping those two videos tomorrow, and I'll send it to you by the end of the day or early morning the day after.
Thank you, thank you.
And I'll just chime in. Thank you, Pramod. Chad Ellis at Bristow is also a big resource for us, and our former co-chair, Adrienne Billings-Smith, will appear with her family. She's the only adult appearing in our program, and I couldn't think of anyone else I'd rather have represent the grown-ups of West Hartford. And I just want to say that hats off to Sarah for helping and for leading and for coordinating and editing this monstrosity that will be shown on December 10th at 8 o'clock. It's going to be great. It's going to be glorious.
It's going to be great. So Adrian and her wife are the two adults. But yeah, I think it's going to be great. And I just love that Dawn put out the idea for it to be youth focused, because I just think this year, that's who we need to be thinking about. In terms of that, anything else on that? In terms of the town of compassion, I had a long conversation with Mayor Cantor, and what we both came to by the end of the conversation was that there's some level of discomfort that she has that honestly I shared, with the idea of having winners in different categories, that it just felt, I don't know, exclusionary. So what she suggested we do instead is have a group of winners, what she was going to call the Town of Compassion or Human Rights Honor Roll, and that any of them can be from any of these categories, but it isn't like you're the #1 healthcare person, but rather here's the 10 people for this year that are our human rights heroes. They come from one of these categories. Any of them could come from one of these categories. Am I making sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
and I agree with Kristen's very aggressive yes and
Yes.
up and down head shakes.
You don't want to exclude anybody. You want to make anybody feel better than the next. So I agree.
You're
I
right.
agree with that for sure.
That makes sense. Why categorize?
Third
it?
it.
Head nod.
I think that's a great idea, actually.
yeah, and she suggested that the honor roll could live forever somewhere in town hall or somewhere on a web page, so that, you know, each year you add to it. She left it up to us how many in one year we want to give out. I can alter the you know, the Google form to make it more clear that it's not like who's the #1 whatever. Obviously this isn't going to happen by December 10th.
I was going to ask, when is this going to happen?
So I'm happy to, and they're happy to send out the form and post it on the town website and send it out with the town emails. But I guess maybe what we can do as a commission is make a decision about a timeline that we think would be useful.
March 1st.
So back up thank you, Eric. Back up for me though. So when does it go out? When is the deadline for them to turn it in? When do we announce the awards?
Dawn, and it's definitely after the holidays. I think it's going to get lost if we send it anytime between now and the 1st of January.
So maybe we set like a February 1st, March 1st, April 1st progressive deadline. You were
April 1st.
definitely right to break it down. I got excited about it. I wanted to do it already.
Now we know you have a thing for deadlines, Eric. Get you excited.
So thank you, Commissioner Schomer. So we're going to say February 1st, we start posting it everywhere. March 1st, the nominations are due. Wait, that doesn't give us time to decide who. How about January 1st, we put it out. February 1st, they're due. March 1st, we meet and decide. April 1st, we announce.
I think that's a perfect plan.
Okay. Thank you.
But Sarah, the more important question is, are you going to still be with us then?
So, I thought I wasn't, but according to Essie, I actually have one more year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot, but to put you on the spot because I think we need you.
We got you, Sarah. We got you.
Nobody needs.
It's all a plan. We planned it.
That's right.
And it worked. So
just when you thought you were out, they pulled you back in.
Exactly.
Good job, team.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sarah. Thanks for all you that. Any questions on those two topics? See none. Okay. So the next topic is I would assume some discussions will be. It is the school resource officer update. Of course, Aurora is not here today, so we would we have Ted and Don. Would like to give us an update on that, especially the event with Representative Jillian Gilchrist.
Aurora sent an email earlier today with some points and some resources, but I'd like to defer to Ted and have Ted provide his perspective and that of the people that he encouraged to attend the meeting.
I mean, you know, it was fine. You go into a meeting like that and people have preconceived notions, and it was actually preconceived notions on both ends. And I tell you that the best thing that happened with the meeting is a couple of us, after the meeting was over and everybody had gone, Aurora and a couple of the girls and me and a couple other people that had shown up, we were talking. And one of the things that we pointed out, they had talked about some of the issues with SROs and Waterbury. And what we had talked about was the SROs that we have had in West Hartford, how long we've had SROs in West Hartford, the interaction with the students, with the families, and everything that happens in West Hartford, and how all the families and all the parents and all the students are, you know, in favor of the SROs, and what might work or what people want to do in one town out of the, what, 169, 159 towns? How many are there in Connecticut?
169.
169 towns. What someone might want to do in a different town isn't necessarily going to work in West Hartford. So looking for some kind of answer that's a statewide answer isn't something that's workable here. And what I came away from, and that's with talking with everybody, not just the people that came, who I had told about the meeting, but other people that I'd spoken with about, you know, liking the idea of having the SROs, at least here in the West Hartford schools. And some of the things that they weren't aware of. The SROs are only in the high schools. You know, again, we've been doing this since, I've been living here for over 50 years, and we've had SROs and police that have been involved with the school system. So that's the feedback I've gotten. And actually, that's the feedback I've gotten from everybody I've talked with. And that's not just talking with people who happen to be conservative or only on one side of the political spectrum. It's talking with people who are Democrats, people who are liberals, people that basically just live in town. And most of the people that I've spoken with, they're in favor of the SROs, even the students that I've spoken with, kids that I've coached, kids that are in school right now that I know, kids, you know, of families that I know. So that's the feedback that I've gotten.
Thank you so much, Ted. I recognize Sarah.
Hi, Ted. This is Sarah Raskin. I just wanted to clarify. So I thought I heard you say one thing at the beginning, but it sounds like maybe I misheard you. So I thought you said that the majority of parents in West Hartford, or all of the parents in West Hartford, are in favor. And I was just wondering where you got that data from. But what you were really saying was the people you've talked to.
I've spoken with. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I will tell you that the people I've spoken to are not. So there's definitely at least a contingent of people who are not in favor of them. So I just want to make sure that I understood if there had been a study or a questionnaire or something like that.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So any other questions or comments on that topic?
I'm going to add a couple things.
Sure.
I arrived an hour late. They were the people who attended split into groups where they were discussing a scenario about a student and a violent act. And the three groups were all having very different conversations. One group seemed to be focused on the racial aspect and the criminal justice part. Another group was very much embroiled in, you know, what kind of counseling or rehabilitation or resources were available to the student. And the third group, in another room, was split entirely along racial lines. Every person of color in that room was trying to explain to the people who were white like me that school resource officers are not someone that they feel comfortable around. And among the white people in the room, including me, and this is Dawn Ennis, by the way, hello, were two officers from SRO, and they were both highly educated. They both had master's degrees, which, you know, for a lot of the people in the room was a bit of a surprise, bit of a learning experience, that they weren't just people who passed the police academy test. They went to graduate school for this, to deal with young people and to work with young people. I represented a friend in saying that this is not just a racial problem, but that the school resource officers often are not looking at all students according to what we were just discussing, SEL, in terms of gender and in terms of identity, and that some students feel very misrepresented by the school resource officer who might be not open-minded to different gender presentations or identities. In addition to that, I said what I said here. I said that I looked into the eyes of moms coming out of the firehouse in Sandy Hook, and I thought of what happened in Detroit or North Detroit yesterday, and I thought, thank God there was an officer in that school. And I said to the people who are not like me, people who are melanin rich and who identify as African American or Black or brown, I said to them, as much as I want that school resource officer there to protect my kid, I recognize and I respect and I understand that it's the last thing you want to see. And I have to, say that I'm still split on this issue because of my wish that officers be there to protect my kid, but also to validate the experiences of children who don't feel comfortable around school resource officers. So I came away still feeling torn, but I thought it was really good to hear different experiences. And it was a really civil conversation. It really was, even between Ted and me. Ted, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I can. Just one question with that. With the, what did you say? Melatonin rich? Okay. Were they from West Hartford? Were they from West Hartford? You're muted.
I'm sorry, I'm on mute. Some of the people were, some of them weren't. I think there were people who were from another group from another town.
Because I think a lot of the people there were from different towns. Because some of the girls we spoke with were from Waterbury. So that's.
Yeah, I didn't do an ID check, to be honest.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I can't answer that question.
Right. Yeah, we were talking with a lot of them. So and again, like we said, it's a town to town. So and all the experiences that we've had, all the experience I had, all the experience that people I've talked to, they've been good. I mean, are you going to have some bad experiences with SROs or with cops in general, or just with other people in general? Yeah, that's going to happen. But I mean, that's part of life. And if you have a couple people who might not want the SROs there, Dawn, you put it out. What is it? Between Hall and Connor, it's about 3,000 students. So let's say 200 of them don't want the SROs there. Well, okay, we got 2,800 that do.
Thank you so much, Ted. Sarah, then Eric.
I'll be quick. I just want to urge us again, as I said in the last section of this meeting, to follow the data and the science and the research that's been done, rather than our own sort of personal reactions that come from different places. I urge you to read the article that shows that schools with SROs are more likely to have fatalities in school shootings than schools without SROs. So if we're saying that they're there in order to protect our children in case of a shooting, then they're actually making it worse. If we're talking about, 200 kids versus 2,000 kids, I think we need to look at the numbers of what happens to Black and brown kids in schools that have SROs versus ones that don't. I'm not saying that we're not going to make any decisions on this for a very, very long time. And I want to learn more. I'm just now forging into understanding this very, very complicated issue. I just want to move us away from here's how I feel about it or here's how my friends feel about it to what does the data show? What does the research show?
Thanks. Ted,
thank you so much, Sarah. Eric, I recognize Eric.
Eric Schomburg. So Ted, I just wanted to briefly mention that just in case that there are 200 against it, doesn't necessarily who surveyed and responded, doesn't mean that everyone else is for it. You'd have to ask them. There's probably a lot of abstentions. And I'm not taking either side because, as Sarah just said, there's still a lot that we need to figure out about this, but I did want to raise that. So Go ahead.
Thank you, Eric. I recognize Ted.
I gotta find that little raise your hand thing for WebEx here. I can't.
It's on the smiley face on the screen, Ted. The smiley face on the screen. When you click on it,
Oh,
you'll
there it
have-
is. Hey.
Yeah, a raising hands
Because I went
option
in there
up there.
before, and all I saw was all the other stuff. I didn't even see that.
Oh, I just physically raised my hand. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. Thanks, Ted.
and Sarah, now, to be quite honest, I mean, I didn't look at any of the links you sent or any of the studies, but one of the reasons I really didn't look is because I'm much more concerned with any studies or anything that are done in West Hartford. I'm honestly not concerned with studies that are done in LA or New York or somewhere else. West Hartford is not anywhere else. I'm more concerned with what we do here. So studies like that, you can't take a study, and again, I didn't read what you sent out, so, but you can't take a study that's done in somewhere like Los Angeles, let's say, and draw any kind of conclusions for West Hartford. It's two totally different places. Two totally, no issue. The issues are different. The demographics are different. The, just everything is different. So you can't draw conclusions from one and not the other. I'm more interested in any studies that are done in West Hartford, about West Hartford.
So while I fundamentally don't agree with you that West Hartford is absolutely unique and that a study that was done nationwide, we're somehow different, characterologically than anybody else in the world, I actually totally agree with you, Ted, which is what I've been saying from the very, very beginning. All I've been asking for since the very beginning when I raised this issue was for some data from West Hartford. I'm totally open to being convinced. I want our SROs to document what they do all day and why it's helpful. Why is it worth the money that we're spending on them? And if they do that, I'll be happy. But that's all I want. I don't want these stories about how, oh, they do all this great stuff. You can't see it. You just have to believe it. I want a study done. I want them to document their time and justify their job experience and not ask me to take it at face value. And so I totally agree with you. I think that that's what we need to do. And I think, it's easily done.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Eric?
Just one follow-up question. So I did read one of the articles that was sent out that indicated that in schools with SROs, there was a higher degree of violent shootings, and that the premise was the presence of the officers did not prevent the violent shootings and the deaths. But my question would be, to take it back a step, is the SRO presence generally in an area where, as a whole, as a municipality, as a county, are those violence statistics escalated there anyway? And is that just a representation of the outside community, or is it a specific anomaly where the SROs are believed to be causing that issue? Because as a child with, as a parent with a child with in the school system and two more on the way, that's something I'd really like to know. Is that a correlation or just a representation going downwards?
I don't want to take up the time now, but I'll send you the original article, Eric, which does control for that. Their premise was that students come more heavily armed if they know there's an armed officer in the school, and that's why there's greater violence. But I'll send you the original article. I'll send everyone the original article.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. So again, I've done a research before on that topic, and I wrote a paper on that topic before, and research has been done in North Carolina and Texas, other places in the country, not only North Carolina, Texas, and two more states that skipping my mind right now. And data shows that, number one, it does not make any student feel safe or safer. Number two, it actually hurts the grades of the students. And when they control for the cumulative GPA of students in the school district with SROs versus not, actually students who go to school with SROs, they score lower on their grades. So for all of the reasons of uncertainty and safety issues and risk, all witnessing all the time a gun police officer walking around causes some anxiety and causes students not to focus and lower their scores. Plus, of course, the highest risk, in my opinion, of course, is the increases the number of the pipeline from school to the criminal system, and that increases that highly. Again, those researches was done in multiple states around the country. And to Sarah and Ted's point, I do not believe West Hartford is that unique. I do believe West Hartford is unique because I love this city, this town more than any other place. But also, in a sense, West Hartford is not unique than on all of those places. But also, I would love to see data from West Hartford. Kristen, did you have a comment? And that would be
Yeah,
the
I
last
just had a comment just on kind of what you said. It's not scientifically proven, but from me being both Black and African American in the school system, going to the high schools with SROs there, me personally, from my friends, when I was in high school, there was probably 10 of them, which is not a lot. They wouldn't participate in after school activities because that SRO was there, because they were brown, they were scared, they didn't want to be around him. They did not want to be around him. It was the same guy for our entire, 4 years at Conard or at high school. And they wouldn't stay after. They didn't want to do sports. They didn't want to do anything that was extracurricular. So like I said, that's not science, but that's my personal experience from me going to school and seeing both sides. My white friends, they were fine. They do, whatever. And my Black friends, they wouldn't want to do any of the extracurriculars or stay after and do clubs and stuff. And honestly, that was the reason why. So I'm like Dawn, I'm not for or against. I'm kind of like that stuck in the middle because I kind of see both sides. So I can't really agree with one until I learn more, which I need to research more. But just from a personal aspect, that's what I see. So
thank you, so Kristen. And what you said is actually very side, and I would love to do a qualitative research on your friends doing some descriptive phenomenology study on your friends. I think that would be very interesting study as well, and it's very very localized, so that would be very very cool.
yes, absolutely.
So I, for the sake of time, we'll move on for the next topic, which also I would assume we'll have some discussion on it, and that for Takesha
Before
to
you
update.
before you do, can I just ask, make one more point?
Sure, Don.
And I promise I'll be
Please
short.
make it brief.
And I understand it's almost 9 o'clock. I'm sorry. And by the way, I'm at the Boy Scouts picking up my youngest. To Ted's point about the fact that many of the people who were Black at the meeting were not from West Hartford, I do think that because there were a lot of people who were encouraged to come to make sure their voices were heard, it doesn't invalidate a Black person's opinion just because they're not from our town. If anything, West Hartford is full of people who have only recently moved here or are considering moving here or have lived here all their lives. It's not all natives. None of us are natives unless you're Native American. West Hartford is a town where people come from other places, including me. So I don't think it's right to invalidate people's opinions just because they were not from our town. And I also just don't think it was really a fair representation of West Hartford, since there were so many people who came, as Ted said, with preconceived ideas. So for whatever reason that was organized, I'm hoping that people came away having learned something about this issue rather than reinforcing their own particular views, including my own. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. Now I recognize Takesha to update us on the crime petition. Takesha, you have the floor.
I'm sorry, what was that? I don't have the agenda in front of me.
According to the crime petition update from the the crime petition.
Oh, I don't have an update on that. I think
that's Ted. That's
I think
Ted.
that's
Yeah,
Ted,
sorry.
because he was the one who was interfacing with. Yeah.
And I spoke.
Okay, I have it in the agenda under Tikisha.
I spoke with a couple of members of the town council, and they told me that basically right now nothing's happened with it, and it's going to be picked up in January because of the election and then the holidays and getting the new committee members and everything else. That it's going to be picked up in January.
Okay, thank you so much. So no update on that one this time. So we have now. We're out of time. But our next meeting will be Wednesday, January 5th in 2022. And hopefully we will send an email to see if you guys are willing to kick 2022 in person or remain virtually. And hopefully we will get your full participation on those emails. Then we will decide and we'll share with the administration our final decision. Now I will ask if there's any open discussion. I see none. So I'd like to thank you all for today, for a great day. And if I have a motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
I second.
Any second? Okay, so we have Ted and Sarah. Any who's in favor? All in favor? Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Meeting adjourned. Thank you so much, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving, Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy all the holidays, and see you next year.
See you next year. Pramod, can you make sure the video gets to me? Because I'm secretary for this meeting. I'm doing Aurora's job this month.
Got it. I will send it to you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
Take care, everyone. And congratulations, Eric, on the twins. I didn't realize it was twins. Woo! All right, we're done.